Hi everybody, this clip is designed to help students with work-related skills Unit 2, WRS2, at an intermediate level. WRS2 is a bit of a departure from WRS1 in that it's effectively a combination of what you're required to do in WRS1 and PDS1. So it joins it both together so that for WRS1 you need to do a project and an associated risk assessment with it. So it's both together. Same as Unit 1 stuff though, you do need to complete 3 projects throughout the course of the year. The booklet that you have for this is fairly sizable, but where you need to start is Outcome 1. That starts on page 1 and goes through to page 9. Your booklets will be blue, but I'm talking to you now with one that is white. In this, you need to start by thinking about people who you would like to work with. Normally, this would be people in the class. If you need to do it online with some friends, that's fine. Otherwise, you need to do it at home with people in your house that can help you out and come up with some possible activity ideas, so some potential projects you can run through. Once you've done that, you need to look at a bit of basic background on each of those potential projects. So you write down the potential project there, you do a bit of research. Why is the project necessary? What is required to complete the task? And any OH&S concerns. The last thing you do is you need to include a rough estimate of costs. This is just a bit of a guesstimate. You need to do that for each possible activity idea that you're looking at, so that's why there are 6 there. Once that's done, you need to narrow it down and tell me which one you have chosen to do as a project and why. You present this to a staff and a peer, so that can be emailed to them and they can give you feedback for it. Once that's done, you actually need to start planning it. Same as PDS1, you need to tell me what the steps are, tell me why that step is needed, and tell me when you aim to complete it by. There's lots of space, so make sure you do detailed steps. Assume we know nothing. You also then need to tell us the resources you need and why you need them. So the resource could be a tool, it could be materials, whatever you need and why you need it. After that, what technology is required. So this could be ICT like a phone, or it could be technology like a drill. And again, explain why it is needed. For those who are going to help you, you then need to tell us what their role is going to be, what job they're going to have, so their responsibilities, and why that role is required. Once that's done, you need to determine what your success criteria is going to be. So how are we going to be able to know that your activity is a success? What's going to be the measure of success here? Once that's done, send that through and to a staff member, and they will give you any conditions or comments for that you need to, so that your project's right to go. Once you've got that feedback, you do need to evaluate it. It's not just a case of getting feedback now. You need to think about what they've said and say what it means. So summarize what the feedback was, and then what can you take from that to improve upon your plan? Once you've done that, you need to actually then do that. So make sure your plan is as good as possible. Go back and change it. Once you've done that, you're up to Outcome 2, which is from pages 10 to 14. Outcome 2 requires you to look at employability skills. We need to know what they are so that we can then improve them so that you're more employable by the time you finish this. So, think about the activity you're going to do. What are the employability skills you're going to need to be able to do that? So an employability skill might be sequential planning, organisation, communication, teamwork, etc. What are things that you're going to need to be able to do that will help you be employable later in life? For each of them that you identify, you then need to write down what the employability skill is that you've written here, and then tell us how it's going to help you complete your work activity. There's a lot there, so that you can do one for each one. This needs to be then presented to a staff member and a peer. Again, email it to them, and you can get feedback from them. Once this is done, we want you to do an employability skills self-assessment. These are some employability skills that we have here. So the bold is the general skill, and then underneath it are the specific skills we want to see from you. We need you to do a self-assessment so that you can say whether you demonstrate that skill often, sometimes, or rarely. So, for instance, if you're looking at solving problems in a team, do you do that often, sometimes, or rarely? Give a tick for the one that you think is most applicable. You then need a staff member to do the same for you, so just email that through to them. After that, we're up to outcome 3. Outcome 3 is asking you to think about the project that you have identified to do and do a risk assessment for it. So in this regard, you're returning to, and I'm on page 15 here, the hierarchy of controls that you've been introduced to in work-related skills and the risk matrix. You're going to need to use both of these to do your risk assessment. The risk assessment pro forma is exactly the same as what you've done in WRS1, but you just need to tell me the risk, detail of the risk, how it was identified, and the potential impact. To do the initial risk rating, you return to the risk matrix to identify what you believe the consequence, likelihood, and risk rating is. So, for instance, if the consequence is negligible injury, but it's very likely to happen, then it's a medium. You then tell us what the action is that you're looking at, who's responsible to fix the OH&S issue, whose responsibility it is, and the timeline that it's going to take you to finish it. You then do the residual risk assessment. So after that's done, what sort of risk remains? Theoretically, it should be lower. Do that for as many risks as you need to mitigate for your project to be successful. Now that's done, you need to think about other potential issues or hazards or risks that might be coming up in your project. It could be privacy, it could be disruption of classes, it could be running out of resources, whatever it is. You need to tell us what that issue is, or issue, hazard, or risk is, the consequence to that, and then possible solutions to it. Then you need to tell us which one you've chosen and why. It's important for you to pre-plan for this because things do go wrong. And if you've got a plan in place already, it's easy to implement that rather than just trying to figure out what to do on the fly. There's a couple of pages of those because there could be lots of potential issues. If you don't have them, if you don't have a lot, that's fine. Again, present to a staff member and a peer. Email it to us so that we can get back to you. The last thing that you need to do in outcome 3 is look at, and this is on page 22, the various technology you're going to use, both ICT and non-digitals, for instance, a drill. Write them all down here, technology, and then you need to tell me what the social consideration for a responsible use of that technology is and an ethical consideration for use of technology. So ethics are thinking about people and how your actions could affect them. So an ethical consideration, for instance, in the use of a phone is making sure that you don't take pictures of people without their permission. Social consideration is to think about how your actions will impact others around you. So, for instance, not using a drill late at night so that it disturbs other people. Once this is done, you need to, again, email that to staff and peers so that you can get some feedback on it. Once this is done, you're up to outcome 4. Outcome 4 is a big section. It's from page 24 to 50, but it's a bit of a misnomer because the vast majority of that are work diaries. So it's from here that the work actually takes place. You need to do the project and OH&S activity that you have identified. And once that's done, you need to send pictures to us throughout the course of the time that you're doing it. That explanation is here on page 24 if you want some more detail. To do your work diaries, it's structured a little bit differently to what you've done in Unit 1. There's 3 sections. There's the pre-work section, so you need to fill this out before you do any work. There is the post-work section, after you've done the work. And then feedback and reflection. Okay? So for the pre-work section, what do you hope to achieve today? So what's your goal today? And what are your priorities? So priority 1 is to dig the hole or mark it out. Priority 2 is to dig the holes. What organisation is required, that's up to you, and who is allocated to do that said work. Again, the organisation of that is your responsibility. After you've done the work, what did you do today? What self-management skills did you evidence? What technology did I use today, and how did I use it collaborative in my group, so together? Then what employability skills did I evidence today and explain? Get that from the list from the self-assessment that you've done. Then feedback and reflection. You need to get someone to give feedback for you. It could be someone at home, it could be mum, dad, could be a cousin, could be someone that's just seen you do the work. But how did they work today, and how did the group perform? Get some signatures from them, and then your view here. So reflection on your day. How can you improve next time? How can you ensure the group improves? And what employabilities did I evidence today, and how can I help? How can I improve them to help complete the project? You do one of those for each day that you have done work. So that's why the booklet is so thick, because there are 2 pages for each. Again, you just send photos through so we can authenticate the work that you've done and prove that it has been done. The last thing that you need to do are some reflections. These are on page 45. We have a staff member reflection, a peer reflection, and the self-reflection. You can get someone at home to do the peer reflection. Send what you've done through to a staff member. They'll do the staff reflection, but the self-reflection you do need to do. There are 2 pages. It is page 49 to 50 for the self-reflection. You just need to work through those questions. So how effective was the activity? What employability skills were demonstrated throughout the project? Again, look at that self-assessment you did. How did the employability skills evidence help complete the project? Comment on your organisation, prioritisation and allocation of tasks. Comment upon your self-management. Comment on your critical feedback you sought and how that changed what you were doing. Comment on the organisation and the implementation of the activity. Evaluate your own problem-solving process. Evaluate your use of technology through the project, and anything else you need to add. You then need to do an overall summary. So what's your overall summary of all the feedback you gathered? What recommendations do you have for yourself for future work-related activities or projects? And with the employability skills you evidence, how can you transfer them to other work contexts? You're then up to outcome 6. Outcome 6 can only be done once you've finished the project. It requires you to present to us about your project in general. So on page 51, it tells you the requirements here, but you do need to prepare and plan your presentation. In that presentation, you need to make sure you include the planning and implementation process of the activity or project, planning for OH&S and other issues, evaluate and analyse the feedback gathered throughout the activity or project, the final outcomes of the activity, and how the activity went as a whole. You do need to present this to a staff member and peer, so you need to record it and send it through. And this needs to be done using appropriate technology. So a lot of people would have a PowerPoint with this. If you want to use another technology besides that, that's fine. But just make sure you send your PowerPoint or equivalent and your recording of your presentation through to a staff member and a peer so that they can give you feedback. After that, to ensure you do plan, on page 52, there's a planning section for you. And then there's a reflection from a staff member on 53, and a peer reflection on 54, and then your own self-reflection on page 55. All of this needs to be done. Once it's all done, you are completed Work-Related Skills Unit 2 for the first time. As with everything, we need this done 3 times throughout the course of the year. We'd be expecting you to start this at the start of week 6 of term 2, finishing the first activity by the end of term 2. You then have term 3 to complete the second and third projects that you're going to complete. As always, if you've got any questions, don't be afraid to ask, and stay safe.